Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Spiritual Transformer. So, a lot of the spiritual teachers out there say that when you are on the right spiritual path, certain things starts to happen, and one of those things is serendipity or synchronicity. The classic example of those is you're thinking about somebody, your friend, your parents, and then a couple seconds later, you get a phone call from that exact person. I just want everybody to know that that has never happened to me, not once. But recently, I see something else happening to me. My very own synchronicity, my very own well-timed events, I guess you can say, and it's actually to do with weather. Yeah, like rain and sun and stuff. So, story time. So last weekend, I like to do things on weekends actually. On weekends, I like to do what I call walk for food. And it's basically just taking a nice walk outside, going to one of the neighborhood restaurants, and sitting down for a meal and then walking back. I get some nice food out of it, and I get a minor bit of exercise, I guess, depending on how far I walk and where I go. So last weekend when I did this, my wife told me that it was raining. She checked outside and said, "Yeah, it's raining." But then when I stepped outside, there was no rain. I walked to the restaurant. I sat inside. I had a nice meal, and when I look out, it looked like it was raining, but I was still eating. After I finished my food and I could walk outside the restaurant, it rained for like about 5 seconds, and then it just stopped. And I walked back home, and I didn't barely got wet or anything. So yeah, it looked like on the weekend the weather was working with me, didn't it? But what if I were to tell you that this has been happening on and off for like the past 4 or 5 months? That's why I noticed every time I go outside on a nice, I wouldn't say nice, but on a rainy, cloudy day, it would rain. I walk out, no rain. I go to the restaurant, cats and dogs outside. I go out of the restaurant, nothing. I didn't even get wet. And this happened over and over again over the span of, I would say, the last 4 or 5 months. And it's pretty crazy. I told my wife about this. So we sort of had a little bit of a thought experiment. So one day, me and my wife we both went on this walk for food. So it was hailing. My wife checked the outside the window, and she said it was hailing. Small drops of hail, not these big damaging golf ball size, but just a tiny little hail that. But you can tell it's really hail because they just bounce off windows and stuff. So she said, "Yeah, it's raining." We went out anyway. Nothing. No rain, no hail, nothing. Got to the restaurant. We sat down for a meal, and my wife swears that it was hailing outside. But from the angle that I was sitting at, I couldn't see anything. I didn't even see any rain. But that's when we decided to have a bit of a thought experiment. So I told her all about what I just told you about how the weather seems to be working with me instead of against me. And she's like, "Okay, well, it's all right, well and good if when you walk out, there's no rain. But what if when I walk out, I want to see hail?" So there's a bit of a conflict there. If the weather is working with me, I would see no rain when I walk out of the restaurant that day. But if the weather is working with my wife, then when we walk out, there will be hail. So we sort of discussed, we're like, well, what's going to happen? The two of us have conflicting, I guess, wishes for the universe, for the weather to work with us. And we came up with like these theories. We said there might be a timeline split that would like one side would get rain, one side would get no rain, and then we'll merge up later on, and we're talking about Mandela effects and all that. But at the end of the day, well, we have to walk outside of the restaurant. So after a nice meal and after our nice discussion, we just walked outside. Since we stepped outside, it was hailing. So, yeah, I guess the universe was working for my wife. But what about me? Believe it or not, the universe and the weather was working for me as well. How? Well, yes, it was hailing, but only very technically. The hail was so small and so pathetic, and there wasn't even really all that much hail to begin with. Very sporadic that I didn't feel anything. Like to me, yeah, sure, it might be hailing, but it didn't feel like hail. It was a weak ass excuse for hail, right? That's how weak it was. That's how little it was. No big deal. And honestly, a minute later, nothing. No hail, no rain, nothing. We just walked home, safe and sound. So I asked my wife, all right, the hail, what it was pretty pathetic. Does that still count for you? And she says, yeah, it counts. Hail is hail, right? She got what she wanted. But at the same time, I got what I wanted too. Because it was really, really sad excuse for a hail, and it really did not inconvenience me. So I guess really the universe or the weather is working with both of us, but it's working with our perception. I mean, my wife perceived the hail that she wanted to see, whereas I wasn't inconvenienced at all by the hail. So my perception was still very comfortable despite the hail. I still had a comfortable time walking home. So yeah, I think that's proof positive that somehow the universe, or at least the weather, is working with us. I That's my synchronicity, it seems. Forget about phone calls. Who calls me anyway? Nobody calls me. But control, well, I wouldn't say control, but working with the weather, the rain, that's a pretty nice bonus. Now, that doesn't mean I can control the weather. I can't. If it's gonna rain, it's gonna rain. If it's gonna snow, it's gonna snow. If it's gonna be sunny, it's gonna be sunny. I really don't have any control over it. I'm just saying that somehow it just seems to work for me. And the case in point is last year, 2025, December 26th, Boxing Day. So Boxing Day, time for sales, and one of the local hobby shops in my city was having a pretty generous sale. But I gotta get my ass down there on Boxing Day. Otherwise, I don't think I would be. I think my schedule demanded that I have to go out on Boxing Day, make those sale purchases before they go out of stock, or yeah, I think it was because I just don't want them. I just don't want somebody else to buy them. They were pretty sweet deals. So the only problem is I had to go out on Boxing Day. And the only problem is there was literally a blizzard happening that day. And it was forecasted on the weather. But I decided to go anyway. And sure enough, the day rolled around. It was blizzard from morning till night. It just didn't let up. I walk outside, still blizzard. The weather didn't, the sun did not just shine just for me. But I still went. I girded my loins and I still went. And it's not an easy distance either. I wasn't driving because I had to go downtown. I can't stand driving downtown. So I had to take public transit. And when I walked outside, I had to trudge through the snow, get on public transit, go downtown, get off public transit, and then trudge through more snow. But you know what? You know what? The weather was working with me this time, believe it or not, because the big blizzard kept people away. Honestly, public transit isn't the most pleasant when there's too many people, but that day on Boxing Day with the blizzard, there was hardly anybody on the train. I got a seat. The train wasn't even like inconvenienced by the amount of snow. It didn't slow down or anything. It just went at its own pace. I got there in just about normal amount of time without snow. It was pretty amazing. It was really comfortable. really smooth. I haven't had a ride like that in ages, right? Nobody bumping against you. You don't have to push anybody to get out of the train. It's pretty nice. And as soon as I stepped out of public transit onto the streets, it was still snowing, but I noticed something. I noticed that it was beautiful, beautiful, right? Like downtown where I live is some parts of it can be really dirty, let's just say, grimy, stuff like that. But with the amount of snow, everything was white. Everything was blanketed in like a foot of snow, and it was just the most purest thing ever seen in that area of town. And I've never seen it like that. Everything looks so white, so pure. And guess what? The weather, the snow kept everyone off the streets too. So it almost felt like that this view I have, this lovely snow white view was just for me. I felt kind of honored to be out on the streets. It was pretty quiet, not a lot of people, and it was just snowing. By that time, it was snowing pretty gently. It wasn't exactly a blizzard anymore, and everything was buried in a foot of snow, and it just looked and felt great. Trudging through the snow wasn't trouble at all because, like, I was like one of the only few people on the streets. There were other couple people around, but downtown in my city, there's a lot of people. But today, it's almost like the path was paved specifically for me to go down to my hobby store and get the sale items and get out, which is exactly what I did. When I went to the store, there was nobody else there too. It's Boxing Day for Pete's sake, but I was the first one in. They opened at noon, and I made it there right at noon. So I was the first guy in, first customer in, first customer to buy something, first customer out. There was like I think two people walked in after me. That's it, right? It was the smoothest thing ever. I got out of the store with my purchases. I went back onto the public transit, and it was just smooth all the way back home. And all that time, it was just like the most beautiful scenery because everything's all blanketed in snow and so pure and so white. And I loved it. I got home. I told my wife, you know what? It might be a blizzard outside, snowing crazy, but I don't care. It was fun. It was fantastic. It was so enjoyable. It's unbelievable. I told my wife that I would do it again in a heartbeat. So yeah, maybe I'll get a chance to do it again next year or something. But yeah, so even when the weather isn't letting up, at the end of the day, for this particular experience that I had on Boxing Day, I felt like the weather was working for me. And it's been like this for months. I don't think I've had any weather related problems for like the past 4 or 5 months. 5 months because it was Boxing Day. And it's great. If this is what it means to be on a spiritual path, then holy cow, I'm in it for the long haul. Like the weather working with you. Right? That's incredible. Anyway, so that's the end of my story. If you enjoyed my story, make sure to hit that like button and be sure to subscribe as well. So, you've been watching The Spiritual Transformer, and I will see you next time. Peace out. Bye.